As Executive Director of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Tim Brennan has worked closely with area legislators in developing policies to help the region. One of those legislators is State Senator Eric Lesser. I sat down with Senator Lesser to talk more about Tim Brennan's contribution to the region and how it's helped the people of Western Massachusetts.
I was certainly sad to hear that, but of course happy for Tim personally. He's had a very long and very distinguished career, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things he wants to do with his family and other fun things he wants to do in retirement. But, you know, I just think about so many projects across Western Mass that he's been involved with, so many initiatives. You know, really just a lot of things we take for granted, just about how we move around, how we live, how our housing works here in Western Mass is because of Tim Brennan and the work he's done over so many years.
Now, his work with the Planning Commission is tied into some of your work here in Western Massachusetts, as well as in regards transportation, economic development, and so forth. How are the two intertwined in terms of legislative activity and what Tim is doing from a planning point of view?
Yeah, so my first real memory of working with Tim was, of course, I knew his reputation and had read about his work and had followed him for many, many years. But when I was running for office, I was, of course, running one of the key points of my platform was rail service and the importance of connecting Springfield and Boston through reliable, fast rail service and what it would do for our communities and what it would do to help create jobs. So I reached out to Tim just totally on a whim and said, you know, hey, I'm a young candidate. I was 28 years old. Can I come talk to you about rail? And of course, he got right back to me and said, yep, come on over to the office. And we ended up sitting, he brought out map after map and blueprint after blueprint of all of the different plans, all of the different iterations. He went through with me the different elements along the rail route and all the things to consider. He brought me up to speed on previous policy and legislative efforts. Just an unbelievable fountain of wisdom and advice.
He is a wealth of knowledge, and he brought a tremendous amount of passion to the job as planner. And that agency, as you well know, covers a lot of ground. I mean, from transportation, cleaning up the Connecticut River, a whole gamut of issues as it relates to quality of life here in this part of the state, and also economic development as well.
Yeah, so I think the most important service that they really provide, that Tim and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission provide, is, you know, Massachusetts is 351 individual cities and towns. So, you know, and each city and town on its own is fairly small. But we don't necessarily think of ourselves, we don't think of economic development, we don't think of our communities as silos of individual cities and towns. So what you need to do is think of a region. A regional approach. You know, you have the I-91 corridor, you have the Connecticut River Valley from Greenfield to Longmeadow, you know, from Bernardston to Longmeadow, and all of the towns in between, working as a team, working together. And Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and Tim in particular, really served a tremendous kind of convening authority of getting all of those different selectmen, mayors, legislators together to work as a team. So for example, you might have an issue that touches Springfield, Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, Chicopee, Wilbraham, Holyoke, all at the same time. There's really no one except Tim Brennan and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission that could serve that convening authority to get everyone together to think regionally. In other states, you have county governments that do that work, but in Massachusetts, especially when county governments really receded as being a key form of government, it really became our planning commissions that filled that void.
Right. And of course, we don't know who Tim's successor will be at this point. We'll know that in a few months. But what do you feel will be the major priority, the biggest challenge facing Tim's successor as he moves forward with this regional planning process and all the intricacies that are involved with it?
You know, it'll be big shoes to fill, but I hope that they put thought into finding a good person who's, you know, very well qualified. And, you know, one of the things that was so and is so great about Tim is he's also a real thought leader. And he's known statewide as someone who is really always being thoughtful about where planning, both as a profession, is going and where the state needs to be going on some high-level policy issues. So, for example, I've worked very closely with him on regional ballot initiatives, an effort to create regional ballot initiatives to fund regional transportation projects. So I think it's very important that they pick someone who's got that stature, you know, who has that ability to project a vision for not only Western Mass, but for where state policy needs to go in these areas. And, you know, I think top of the list really needs to be the progress on rail. That will be a very lasting legacy of Tim's. The North-South rail service, the pilot is starting this summer of Greenfield-Springfield rail service that will connect people from Greenfield all the way into New York City. That really is in large measure because of Tim and the work Tim did to see that project through. We now have a study underway of high-speed rail service between Pittsfield and Boston. Again, Tim, integral part of that project. So I think in 20 years, in 30 years, when we look back on Tim's legacy, I think people will still remember that because those will be lasting changes that he made to the quality of life here.
He sure did generate the impetus and momentum going forward with those issues, as you have in the legislature. Quick update on East-West Rail and the study. What's happening there, and is there any movement forward?
Yeah, so great question, Ray. The study is underway. MassDOT did give us an update. We had Secretary Pollack in Springfield just a few weeks ago testifying before the Ways and Means Committee, and we really asked some very detailed questions of her about the progress of that study and where things stand. So $1.1 million top to bottom feasibility analysis. They're right in the middle of it right now. It's supposed to be wrapped up by the end of 2019 or early 2020. So we're going to, of course, be paying close attention to that. And they're going to probably be providing us a sort of menu of different options, 5, 6, 7 options of service, and of course what the costs or the considerations will be of that service. Something I'm going to be paying very close attention to is really two things. Number one, we need a thorough analysis of the benefits of the project. Infrastructure is a tough thing because it's very expensive up front. We all know that. But if you had done a feasibility analysis of the Hoover Dam, it would never have been built, or of the Erie Canal. We need a sense of what the job creation will be, what the ridership will be, what the economic spinoff will be for communities like Western Mass. And I think it's very important that they also include a full analysis of what a truly high-speed option would be. We need that fast, reliable, frequent service to stem the tide that we're on with our economy here in Western Mass.
So your expectations are high. I mean, the state is obviously investing money for this feasibility study. It's not something that will lead to a dead end, you feel. I mean, there will be options, as you mentioned, moving forward. They won't just come back and say, oh, it's a dead issue and forget it.
Well, there's certainly that risk. So we need to be vigilant. I certainly would not be happy with that kind of an outcome. So we really need everyone watching. We need the community really engaged in this process. MassDOT did do a hearing in Springfield back, I believe it was on March 12th or thereabouts, and it was very well attended. There were a lot of people there and a lot of people offering their opinions and their feedback. I think everyone needs to stay engage with it. There is a concern I have that sometimes you can study these things to death, and so that's something that we've got to keep an eye on. So, I think it's to be continued. It's incomplete at this point, but I think we need to zoom out and acknowledge something, which is really for the first time ever, we have had a focused, serious, statewide effort on looking into how to make Springfield-Boston Rail a reality. And that is something that even a few years ago, when it was proposed, was laughed out of every room.
Moving forward now with some of the legislation you've sponsored or co-sponsored as it relates to your committees, healthcare obviously is a big issue. You've got some legislation coming up on that. What's happening with that as it progresses?
Yeah, so the cost of healthcare is out of control. It's just too high. The cost of prescription drugs. Every day I hear from constituents who are having trouble buying their prescription drugs, who are having trouble with really high deductibles, high monthly premiums. The system is not sustainable. It's also bankrupting our state. We now have 41% of the state budget is now Mass Health. Now, while those are important expenditures, of course, we got to keep people healthy. It's crowding out our ability to spend money on anything else, on public safety, on parks, on environmental protection, on education, you name it. So we've got to get this under control. We need to be thoughtful about it, and we need to make sure that we're continuing to expand access to everybody who needs it. So that's the not easy or light topics, but that's going to be at the top of the list. And there will be I do think there will be a substantial healthcare cost containment bill that is brought up this session.
Another event that's going to be happening in Western Massachusetts in June is something called Thrive After 55. I know this is something that's you're involved with directly. It's been growing over the years, attracts a tremendous number of seniors. Can you bring us up to date on what this year's event is going to look like, where, when, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's our third annual event, Thrive After 55 Senior Fair. It's grown exponentially each year. We're expecting a huge crowd this year. It will be Friday, June 21st, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At the Field House in Springfield College, which is actually where they do their commencement exercises. So it's a huge space. We're going to have at least probably well over 100 different organizations participating. Everything from veteran service agencies, the RMV will be there, PVTA will be there, housing service providers, Springfield Senior Services, rehab and physical fitness centers, legal services, you name it. The Massachusetts Attorney General will be there doing consumer protection workshops. We're also going to have Heartsong Yoga. Sheila from Heartsong Yoga in East Long Meadow will be doing chair yoga for participants, and there'll be a free boxed lunch for everyone. So it's really a chance to really be one-stop shopping for seniors to come to one place and see all the different services, all the different opportunities for them to live a healthy lifestyle in one place.
And when you look at the changing demographics, seniors are a growing demographic here in Western Massachusetts.
Yep, exactly. So, the point of the fair, of course, is to be fun and to provide resources to people. We're going to have raffle prizes. There will, of course, be the chair yoga and a lot of other great activities. Lunch will be served. But it's also a very important public policy point as well, which is, the senior population in Western Mass is the fastest growing group. Our populations are aging in Western Mass, and that, of course, comes with great opportunity. Seniors are active in their communities. They're volunteering. A lot are retired and have time to spend with grandkids and with community efforts. But it's also creating challenges. Continued burden on our healthcare system, challenges around access to housing and transportation, and we need to be thoughtful about how we respond to that.